Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. This video will be about CFNL Advanced Financial Management. In this, we will be seeing the concept revision of the chapter Security Valuation. We will be taking up the chapter, explaining each and every concept one by one, and we will be seeing examples from the study material, illustrations, and different knowledge questions for each and every concept that we are seeing. So this is a concept revision series. This is the first video in the series that we are uploading, and the future videos in this series will be uploaded based on the response from you for this kind of videos. So if you have any doubts, please mention it in the comment section. And then if you need any videos relating to advanced financial management or CA final subject, clearing any concept or about any topic, you can put that also in the comment section. I will read each and every comment and I will reply to you. This video will be suitable for students who are preparing for IBS paper, CA Final Paper 6 Integrated Business Solutions. They can refer to this video for refreshing their knowledge about advanced financial management. And if you are a first timer for advanced financial management, this chapter, you can watch this video to get an overview. And then, even if you're preparing for advanced financial management, if you are not clear on some concept, you can watch this video to get that concept clarity. This is the main purpose of this video. Now we can start the chapter of security valuation. In this, we will be seeing all the concepts one by one, and then we will be seeing examples from the ICS study material or testimonial questions and all for explaining those examples. These are the list of concepts that we are going to see in this chapter. We will be using the examples to explain them also. Not all the concepts are covered in this single video. This is just a part 1 of this chapter, and then another part will be uploaded where we are covering the rest of the concept. First, we can start with the concept of present value. Before starting present value, we need to know one thing. When they are giving data in a question about cash flows or initial investment or the sales proceeds, at which time you are getting, at the end of first year, second year, third year, in those times, you need to know how to visualize the question. You need to represent the question in a manner in which you can easily understand the data. So for that, we'll be using a timetable. This is the table which you are going to use. This will be the time which will be in the first row, 0th year, first year, and second year. For example, here 0th year is the today. This is the present time period. The today is the date in which you are existing, and this first year is the end of the first year. This thing marks the end of the first year. From today, after 1 year, this first year will be denoting. The second year will be the end of second year. So this is the timetable which we are going to use. Now we can see an example for understanding the concept of present value. We have a project. In that project, if you invest 1 lakh today, you will get 1,20,000 after 1 year. Now, here if you see, you are getting 20,000 rupees extra. You are putting only 1 lakh, but you are getting 1,20,000. This extra 20,000 you are earning, that is the return which you are getting. That is the rate of return. That rate of return, you can easily find out that 20,000 you are earning on 1 lakh, so the return is 20%. So in this transaction or arrangement, if you see, we have 3 things. One is the initial investment you are making. Another is the future cash flow which you are getting. The word is very important, future cash flow. This is the return that you are earning. Here, this 1 lakh you are investing today, that is called as the present value. This 1,20,000 which you are getting in future, that is called as the future value or the future cash flow. This 20% is called the return that you are earning. So, that is the 3 main things which you need to understand here. Now, 1 lakh you are putting, 1 lakh plus 20% you are getting the return. So when you do combine these 2 things, you will get the future value, present value plus the return which you are earning. This either you can write it in a normal format like this, or if you want to write it in a systematic format where you can adjust all the numbers to get the appropriate future value, we can do it like this. We can keep an equation, present value multiplied by 1 plus the discounting rate. That rate should be in decimal. The interest, the actual return which you are earning, that should be in decimal format. If 20%, it should be 20 divided by 100. You should be using 0.20. So 1 plus R. This T will be the time period. For example, if you are getting the cash flow every year, the time period is the number of years. How many years you are investing? That should be in the power. So, present value into 1 plus the rate, whole power, you have to keep the time in the power, you will get the future value. Here, this time period will be in years, R will be in percentage per annum. If the time is in years, the percentage return which you are using, that should also be in per annum basis only. Now, here if you see, you can invert the equation. You can take this 1 plus R to the power T to the other side of the equation, and you can form a new equation. So, here you can see the future value when you are dividing by 1 plus R, that factor. This will be called as the factor. And then when you are dividing the future value by the factor, you are getting the present value. So, this is the equation which you need to understand. For example, when you are getting a cash flow in the future, for example, at the end of first year, you are getting 2 lakh rupees. Now, the required rate of return, you know, this R also, you know, this future value also, you know, you want 10% return. This is the R. This 2 lakh will be the future value. Now if you want the present value, you can do this. 2 lakh, this is the future value, you can put it in the numerator, divided by 1 plus 0.10 to the power 1. You have to bring it back to 1 year. You want to bring the present value. The present value is the value at today's time. So you have to bring that value from the end of first year to 0th year today. So you have to pull it back 1 year. So 1 will be in the power. So like this, you can discount the cash flow. This is the process of discounting present value and future value. Now we can see another example. Here we have 2,24,000 cash flow you are going to get at the end of first year. You want 12% return. What is the present value of the future cash flow? Same thing. Divide the future value by the 1 plus R factor. You will get the present value. You are getting 2 lakh here. Here by doing this, you can find out one thing. If you want 12% return, how much return you want on the amount you are investing, that you have to decide first. And then that future cash flow you are getting. If you want that future cash flow and then you want to earn 12% return also, how much is the maximum amount that you have to invest? That is the present value which you are getting. If you invest correctly 2 lakh, you will get 12% return when you are getting the cash flow. But this is the present value. This value you should not invest more than the value today. So what will happen if you invest more than the value? You will not get the required rate of return. If you invest correctly 2 lakh, you will get 12% return. Now, if you are investing 2 lakh 10,000, we can keep it. Then what will happen? You will get a lesser return. 2 lakh 10,000 you are investing. 2 lakh 24,000 will be the maturity proceeds. 14,000 is the return that you are earning. How much you are investing? 2 lakh 10,000. So when you multiply by 100, you will get the return as 6.67 percentage. But actually you wanted 12 percentage. Since you invested more than the present value, you are not achieving that required rate of return. So what you need to understand is that you can discount the future value, future cash flow using the required rate. You will get the present value. That present value will be the maximum amount of initial investment that you have to make to earn the required rate of return. If you pay more than that as initial investment, you will not be able to achieve the required rate of return. That's all about the concept of present value. Now we need to know the relationship between the required rate of return and then the present value. For that we can see an example. Here, this is the base example. We want 10% return. This is the cash flow which you are getting at the end of first year 1 lakh, at the end of second year 1 lakh, at the end of third year 1 lakh. Now when you pull all this to present value, you will get the total of present value of the future cash flow. This you already know how to pull it back to present value. When you pull all this to present value, totally it is coming to 2,48,000 at the discount rate of 10%. This is the base thing which you are going to see. Now when we increase the discount rate, what is happening? When we decrease the discount rate, what is happening to the present value total which we are getting here? That is what we have to note. And this before doing that, we can see an alternative presentation for this also. This we are representing in a chart format to understand the cash flow. When you are seeing the question, if you are unable to interpret it, you can do this and you can see what are all that is the data given in the question, so that you will be able to get an idea of what it is there. Now if you are doing this for each and every question, it will take time. When you practice enough, you can do an alternative presentation in the exam. This entire chart you need not draw in the exam. Alternatively, you can use this type of presentation. The cash flow at the end of first year, you are discounting by using power 1 plus interest rate factor. At the end of second year, you are getting cash flow that you are discounting for 2 years. At the end of third year cash flow, you are discounting for 3 years. Like this, you can use the alternative presentation. Future cash flow you have to take. This at the end of which year you have to see. If it is at the end of first year, if this is the denoting factor, here you can see that FCF meaning future cash flow. This number which I am writing here 1, that is denoting at the end of which year I am getting that money. If I am writing FCF 1, the future cash flows we are getting at the end of first year. This you have to divide by 1 plus R to the power 1. At the end of first year you are bringing it to present value by 1 year. Same like that for future cash flow received at the end of year 2, you have to use 1 plus R to the power 2. Like that, that is the format or formula which you have to do for present value. This formula you need not remember, just this how to pull that present value you need to know, and how to present that in exam, that you need to know. Now we can see another method for doing the same calculation. The same thing, instead of doing this every time, we have a shortcut also for finding out this present value, that we can see. This we are, for example, we can take the first year cash flow alone, 1 lakh divided by 1.10 to the power 1. This we can write in another manner also. 1 lakh into 1.10, this portion factor alone we can write separately, 1 divided by 1.10. Here when you solve for this portion alone, you will get the answer as 0.909. This 0.909, we will call this as present value interest factor. Now what will happen when you multiply this 1 lakh future cash flow with the present value interest factor? future cash flow you are having, you are multiplying it by present value interest factor. Now as a result, what you will get? You will get the present value. What is happening? Nothing but this 1 lakh divided by 1.10, we are separating it. We are taking the cash flow separately, we are taking the factor separately. This portion we are calling it as factor. When you multiply it with future cash flow, you will get the present value of the future cash flow. Same thing you can do for each and every year. Future cash flow multiplied by the factor. Factor is nothing but 1 divided by 1 plus r to the power t. That factor you can multiply and you will get the present value. In this method also you can do it and you will get the same present value. Here, if you are using only 3 digits after the decimal point, you will get some approximation difference due to rounding off and all. But that is not that much of a issue. If you are doing this properly, then no problem. Just you have to be careful that you have to multiply using the numbers properly. You should not wrongly take the numbers when you are using a calculator. For alternative presentation, this also you need not do every time. For this factor for calculating the present value, using the present value factor also, we have alternative presentation. That same thing you can do it like this also. This you can do it and find out the present value. Like this you can present in the exam. And then the second method is you can take the years and cash flows in a tabular format. Year 1 end you are getting 1 lakh cash flow. Year 2 end 1 lakh cash flow. Year 3 end 1 lakh cash flow. And then oppositely in the next column you can write the factor which you are going to multiply with. That 1 divided by 1.10 power 1 power 2 power 3, that factor you have to write here. Multiply with the respective cash flow, you will get the present value of the each and every cash flow at the end of each year. When you total that, you will get the total present value of the cash flow. This PVI of 0.909, that and all is the present value interest factor. Or else here one more shortcut we can apply. Why? Because all the cash flows are same. Every year we are getting same 1 lakh only. For that, instead of doing separately 1 lakh into 0.909, 1 lakh into 0.826, like that, doing it separately, we can combine all this. 1 lakh multiplied by the total of all the factor. This you can use. So when you do that, you have to add all these factors. It will come out to 2.486. And when you multiply this 1 lakh with the total of the factor also, you will get the same answer. Because every year the cash flow is same. Every year you are going to multiply with the respective factor. Instead of that, you can take the constant cash flow which you are getting and multiply it with the present value factor total. This we will call it as present value interest factor, but annuity. Because every year at the end of year you are getting a cash flow. You are getting an equal cash flow, that will be called as annuity. For that you are using the interest factor, totaling the interest factor. So when you are taking a separate interest factor 0.909 alone, it will be called as present value interest factor only. But when you are totaling it for 3 years or 4 years, it will be called as a series of factors which you are adding. It will be called as present value interest factor annuity. So you can either in the first method you can do this like this, or else you can find out the factor, do it in a tabular format, or else the same thing. If you are having uniform cash flow every year same amount only, then you can add the factor and you can multiply using the present value interest factor annuity. So these are the different presentation which you can do in exam for present value. Now we can see how the percentage changes will affect the present value. At the base case, we saw that 10% required rate of return, we are getting a cash flow, present value of future cash flow, present value as 2,48,000. Now we can increase the required rate. From 10%, it became 15%. We added 5%. Now what happened to the present value? The present value, it got reduced. We got 2,28,000 only. At 10%, we got 2,48,000. But at 15%, we are getting 2,28,000. Here what is happening? We increased the discount rate. We increased the discount rate or the percentage. But what happened? The present value, it got decreased. It got minus. So we can understand there is an inverse relationship. When you increase the discount rate, what will happen to the present value? Present value will come down. So what you have to do when you want to reduce the present value, you have to try to increase the discount rate. This we can see it later also. Now we can see another example. The same thing, I am reducing the discount rate from 10% to 5%, I am bringing it down. Now in 5%, what is the present value you are getting? 2,72,000. It is more than the base case. Here as a summary, if you can see, at the base case you are getting 2,40,000. When you increase the discount rate plus 5%, the present value is reducing by 20,000. When you are reducing the discount rate by 5%, minus 5% you are doing, the present value is increased by 23,000. So this inverse relationship you need to understand. Just you need to understand that if you want more present value, if you want to increase the present value, what you have to do? You have to reduce the discount rate. When you want to decrease the present value, you have to add the discount rate. So that discount rate you can change and manipulate the present value also. Now the next thing is interest rate. Interest rate, that the rate of return or interest rate, it will be given in per annum format only generally. For example, if it is 12%, it is given, it means 12% per annum. When you multiply by the number of months, you can find it for the shorter periods also. This 12% is for 12 months. If you want the rate for 6 months, you can multiply by 6 by 12 and find out that 6% is the rate for 6 months. So this is the concept of interest rate. Now we have to see about the concept of net present value. We already saw two things in present value itself. One is the initial investment which you are making. Here you can see that this 2,24,000 is the future cash flow which you are getting. 2 lakh is the initial investment. In the first example, this 1,20,000 is the future cash flow. 1 lakh is the initial investment. In this everything we are having at a percentage. 20% is the rate of return. Now what is the net concept of net present value? Here if you see, it is the formula of present value of future cash flow less initial investment. What is the initial investment that you are putting? And then what is the present value of the future cash flow that you are getting? When you do this, you can find out whether the NPV is coming positive or negative or zero. Based on this, you can see whether the required rate of return that you are expecting that is achieved or not. For example, you can see here. Yeah, now you can see here in example 6 we have a required rate of return of 12%. Whatever the amount we are investing, we want 12% return every year. Now these are the project details. In the project 80,000 you should invest now. Every year you will get a cash flow of 30,000. Now whether the 12% return is achieved or not, that how you can check? You have to see how the 12% return is achieved or not, that you have to check. For that only that NPV concept is helping us. Here we can calculate the NPV. This 30,000 cash flow which you are getting every year, you have to bring it to present value. At present value, which percentage you have to bring? At 12% required rate of return, you have to bring it to present value. After that, you have to net it with the initial investment. You have to adjust it with the initial investment. After that, what is the net amount which you are getting? That will be the net present value. Here we can see the 30,000 every year you are getting, you are multiplying by the annuity factor. 1 divided by 1.12 power 1 power 2 power 3 power 4, like that. For 4 years you are taking that all the factors you are adding up together and you are getting the annuity factor. You are multiplying it with the cash flow, you are getting the total present value of the future cash flow. This will be giving the total present value of future cash flow. You are reducing the initial investment. Now as a result, what you are getting? 11,110 you are getting. Every year you are getting cash flow. Everything you bought to present value. At present value, 0th year, you are spending 80,000 rupees. And in the future cash flow present value, it is coming to 91,110. In a net basis, when you see you are getting a profit of 11,110. This NPV is coming to positive. You are earning more than the initial investment in present value itself. So what is the meaning? Our required rate of return is achieved. When the NPV is positive, we are getting the required rate of return. Now, when the NPV is negative, we are unable to achieve the required rate of return. We want 12%, but the actual return which the project is giving, that is, for example, 10% or 8% only, it is there. In this case, what will happen? The NPV will become negative. We will not be able to achieve the required rate of return. That is what it is showing, the NPV negative scenario. Now, the NPV is 0 means what is the meaning? When we get more than, when we get positive NPV, we can say that a required rate of return is achieved, and then positive also we are getting the value. So, the actual return is more than the required rate of return. For example, if it is 13% or 14%, and when you are discounting using 12% only required rate, you will get a positive NPV. You are getting actual return more than the required rate of return. NPV positive. When you are getting less than the required rate of return, you will get a negative NPV. When you are getting exactly NPV 0, correctly the required rate of return is achieved. You are not getting anything more, you are not getting anything less. Whatever the cash flow you are getting and initial investment you are making, it is giving you the return that you are requiring correctly. Exactly that much return you are earning. So that is the meaning of NPV equal to 0. The percentage at which NPV equal to 0, the discount rate at which NPV equal to 0, that is the actual return that you are earning. This actual return that you are earning, that percentage, they will also call it as IRR, internal rate of return. Inside a project, internally, what is the return that project is generating for you? That is the internal rate of return. Here, if you see in the first example which we saw, this is the future cash flow. This will be equal to the initial investment when you are discounting it using the rate of 20%. This is the actual return that the project is earning. So what is the meaning? This 20% is the IRR. The rate at which the future cash flow is equal to the present value of future cash flow is equal to the initial investment. Actual return you are earning. That is the IRR. Now, when you are having only one cash flow, you can easily use different rates. You can use trial and error method and then find out the IRR easily. But when you are having multiple cash flows, it is difficult to find out the IRR using normal methods itself, normal trial and error methods itself. For that, we are having a concept called interpolation. We are approximating the IRR based on some present value. For that only, we need to know the relationship between discount rate and present value and all. Now, we can see the example for finding out the internal rate of return. Now here you can see this is an example. Here this is a project. Initially you have to invest 20,000 today. At the end of first year you will get 3,000. At the end of second year you will get 23,000. That's all the end of the project. Now how much return that project is actually giving you? How much return you are earning? That is what we have to find out. For that we have to find out the IRR. First what we can do? We can use trial and error method to find out two rates at which we are getting the present value. For that first we can use a discount rate. Here first we can try with the discount rate of 10%. We can use 10% to pull the future cash flow. Now what will happen? 3000 pulling it back 1 year using 10%, 23,000 pulling it back 2 years. What is the present value you are getting? 21,736. Now what we want? We want the present value of future cash flow to be exactly equal to the 20,000 initial investment. Only then we will get the NPV to be 0 and we will get the internal rate of return properly. We want the present value to be 20,000. How much we are getting? 21,736. We are getting 1,736 extra positive. So we can try another percentage. We want to reduce the present value. We are getting 21,736. We have to bring it to 20,000. Now what we have to do? We have to reduce the present value. For that, what we have to do? We have to try a higher discount rate. We have to increase the discount rate. Now currently we tried 10% discount rate. We have to try a higher discount rate, 11 or 12% we have to try. Now we can take 20% next time. For the second method, we can for the second step we can take 20% discount rate. When you take 20% discount rate, what is the present value of the future cash flow that you are getting? You are getting 18,472. This is the present value of future cash flow that you are getting at 20%. So we want 20,000 exactly. But we got one amount 21,736 more than 20,000 and one amount 18,472 that is less than 20,000. Now using this interval we can find out the rate at which exactly we are getting 20,000. Now you can see here at 10% you got 21,736. At 20% you got 18,472. We want to find out the percentage at which exactly we are getting 20,000. So here we can see that this interval from 10% you can move upwards or from 20% you can move downwards. Between this 10 and 20 only you are having the discount rate. From 10 you can go you can add some portion and you can get the proper discount rate, or from 20 you can reduce some portion and get the discount rate. How I am getting this plus and minus logic is that from 10% discount rate you are getting the present value of 21,736. 21,736 you are getting. You have to reduce the present value to 20,000. You have to subtract, you have to do some minus to the present value, you have to reduce the present value. So what you have to do? You have to increase the discount rate. You have to increase the discount rate from 10. You have to add something. Only then you will get the proper discount rate. If you see in another manner, from 20%, you are getting 18,472. You want to increase the present value to 20,000. You have to add the present value. So what you have to do? You have to reduce the discount rate. You have to increase the present value. What you are doing? You have to reduce the discount rate from 20. You have to do 20 minus something. Only then you will get the correct discount rate, at which you are getting exactly 20,000 present value. First we can do the 10 plus method. From 10 we can increase and find out the correct discount rate. Here at 10 you are getting 21,736. So 10 plus something you have to do. You have to reduce the present value by how much? 1,736 you have to reduce. From 21,736 present value you have to bring it to 20,000. So you have to reduce the present value by 1,736. Now for a total of 10% difference, from 10% the discount rate becomes 20%. Total how much increase in discount rate it is happening? 10%. For this total 10% discount rate, how much present value is getting affected? 3,264. From 21,000 it became 18,472. This much present value is getting affected. This is the total difference that is happening for a change in discount rate by 10%. How much present value you have to modify? 1,736. So you can proportionately find out how much is the value that you have to add to 10. So 10% you are having, plus you have to do the for the total 10% interval in percentage, the total present value affected is 3,264. This 10% will represent the 3,264 change in present value. How much you have to change the present value? 1,736. So this portion will give you the value which you have to add to 10 to get the proper discount rate. So here if you see 10 you are taking, and then for this entire interval of 10% you are getting this much present value difference. We want to change the present value by 1,736. So that same calculation we have done here. You are adding this portion to 10. You are getting the discount rate of 15.32%. Now we can do it from 20 minus also. From 20 we are getting the discount rate, present value of 18,472. We have to add some present value and add it to bring it to 20,000. So we are changing some present value. So we have to make appropriate change in the discount rate also. Only then we will get the correct discount rate. We are adding 1,528 present value, and then how much we have to change to the discount rate, that we have to see. 20 is the discount rate that we are having. We have to minus something. This portion only we are going to find out. After that we will get the appropriate discount rate. For this portion only we have to see. We are going to increase the present value. From 18,000 we have to increase the present value to 20,000. How much present value we are increasing? 1,528. Total, when you increase the present value by 3,264, we are getting the discount rate. Discount rate is getting reduced by 10%. From 18,000, when you bring the present value to 21,000, you are adding 3,264. What is happening? The discount rate is reduced by 10%. When you add this much present value, discount rate reduces by 10%. You have to add the present value by 1528 only. So how much discount rate you have to reduce? That is the question. For this 10, the entire 3,264 will be the representation. You have to change the present value by 1,528. This portion you have to subtract from 20 because you are coming from higher rate to correct discount rate. So you have to minus it. When you do that, you will get the IRR 15.32%. Now, very simple. I will repeat it once again. We can just remember the 10 plus method. You can remember any one method and use it in the exam. No problem. First, you have to find out the present value at 2 discount rate. 10% this much present value. 20% this much present value. Now, see the difference in percentage. 10%. See the difference in present value in the entire interval from 21,000 to 18,000. Totally, how much difference is there? 3,264. Take the first percentage. Between 10 and 20, if it is having, you can see that the discount rate is something more than 10. 10 plus it is the discount rate. So you have to add something to 10. 10 plus we found out. Now how much you have to add? That is what we are finding out. You have to increase the reduce the present value by 1736. You have to change the present value by 1736. 10 percentage it is changing for 3,264 change in present value. We have to change the present value by 1736. So how much proportion percentage we have to add? This we can find it out. Add this value to 10. You will get 15.32%. That's all about the concept of IRR. This is how we have to use the two different discount rate and find out the IRR. Here, one more important thing which we need to notice is that here the IRR which we got is 15.32%. The same example is given in the study material. When you see in the study material, they would have given that the IRR is 15%. Approximately both are equal, but we are getting a different answer. Why? Because the interpolation percentage which we used two discount rate for interpolation. The difference between these two discount rate is very big. 10% interval we are having. Because of that, we are getting an approximation difference and we are getting an approximate IRR only. But when you are using closer to percentage, when you are using 14 and then 16 and then you are calculating the IRR using interpolation, you will get exactly 15. And then when you use the things like 13 and 17 when you are using, the gap is increasing. So the accuracy will also get reduced. So you have to use two close rate percentage for interpolation. Only then you will get the most accurate IRR. In examination, you have to try to keep the difference between 2% as 4 or 5%. The interval should be either 4 or 5%. Only then you will get the answer that is close to the suggested answer. So that's all about the calculation of internal rate of return. Now we can start the concept of equity risk premium. What is the meaning of equity risk premium? Whenever you are thinking to invest some amount, you can either invest in the fixed deposit, or you can invest in the stock market, or you can buy the government bond, or you can buy the debentures of company. Like that, you are having a lot of options. And then you have to decide how much is the required rate of return for an investment. If you are investing an amount, how much percentage you want? Every year I want a 10% return. Every year I want 12% return. Like that, you can find out the required rate of return. After that, you have to invest in the portfolio or the asset class in which you are getting the required rate of return. Only if that investment is matching your required rate of return percentage, you can invest in it. Otherwise, you will not be able to achieve the required rate of return. For that, we need to find out how much return we want. That how we can find out? That we can find out based on the riskiness of the asset. When you are investing in fixed deposit, there is no risk. Now, because of this, you will get only low return. Some hardly 5 or 4% you will get in the fixed deposit. So this you are getting because you are not having any risk. You are not taking any risk, so you are getting a low return. But when you are investing in the stock market, what you will get? You will get 12 to 13%. Like that you can take it. That is the average return of the stock market. Like that you can assume. And by getting this for getting this extra return, you are getting only 4 or 5% in fixed deposit. Now you are getting extra return. For that extra return, you are taking a risk. That risk is the risk which you are getting in the stock market. That return you will not get correctly. You cannot say that. You cannot say with pinpoint accuracy that I will get exactly 12%. I will get exactly 13%. Like that you cannot say. That risk is there. You will have a return that is different from the expected return. You were expecting 12 to 13% on an average, but you may get 6% also. You may get 0% also. You may get negative 5% also, or you may get 40 or 50% also. So that risk is there. For that risk, you are taking that extra risk and getting that extra return. So what is the thing which we need to understand here is that whatever the risk we are taking, based on that only we will get the return. So when we are finding out the required rate of return also, we have to keep in mind the riskiness of the asset in which we are investing. If we are investing in a more risky asset, we want more return. That is the logic. For that, we are using a capital asset pricing model concept to find out the required rate of return on equity shares. When you are investing in equity share, How to find out the required rate of return? For that, this model will help you. The main equation which you need to remember here is risk-free rate plus return of the market minus risk-free rate into beta. Now we can break this one by one. First here, risk-free rate is the rate which we are getting without taking any risk. That is the rate of return on the government bonds. When you are buying any government bond, there is a promise by the government. The government will definitely pay you the promised return. There will be no change in the return which is promised by the government. So there is no risk. The risk will be zero. So that is the risk-free rate that you are earning without without taking any risk itself. For example, if 8% is the government bond percentage, this risk-free rate you are earning without taking any risk. Now the next thing is market return, RM. RM is the rate of return in the stock market. What is the return of the stock market? What is the meaning of the stock market? Stock market means all the companies which will be listed in the stock exchange. We cannot take the return of each and every company and take an average. That is not possible. So we are taking that the index of the market. In Bombay Stock Exchange, we have an index called Sensex. In National Stock Exchange, we have Nifty. That index we are taking that and considering that it is representing the entire market. In that index we will have top 100, top 30 companies, top 50 companies, like that we will have the collection. That collection will be going up or down. That only we will be saying the market has gone up, the market has gone down by 20 points, 100 points, 1000 points, like that. That only we will be considering as the entire market. We cannot take each and every stock, so we are considering that index is the entire market. In that we are having some risk. In the stock market itself we are having some risk. Even if you take the average return of the market, we are having some deviation or risk in that. We will not exactly get the pinpoint accurate expected return. For that risk, we are assigning a number. We are giving a coefficient, like beta is the coefficient which we are giving to the risk attachment. The risk which is there in the market, for that we are assigning that beta is equal to 1. For the market return, always the beta is 1. Beta is the riskiness of the investment, riskiness of the thing, we can say like that. Whatever the risk that is there in the stock market, we are assuming that as 1 or 100%. 1 is the risk in the stock market. Now, when we are taking any particular stock or a share of a particular company we are going to buy, we can compare it with the market and see how much risk it is there. In market, we are having a risk of 1. Beta is 1. But when our company, we have to see how much is the beta of our company when compared to the market. The beta of the market will be equal to 1. What is the beta of our company? For example, the beta of our company is 2. What is the meaning is that the stock market, the market return has a risk of 1. Our company is 2 times riskier than the market. The risk of our company is 2 times the market. Market, we are taking it as a base and comparing all the companies with that. For that only, we are using the beta factor. Beta will be telling us the riskiness of the thing when compared to the market. For the market return, stock market return, the beta is always 1. Of our company beta, we will have it. It will be given in the question. Based on that, we can see that how much our company is risky when compared to the market. In market, the risk is 100%. In our company, beta is 2. Our company is 200% riskier. We are having 2 times risk more than the market. So that is what we have to understand here using beta. By this beta, what you can understand, how much extra risk we are having in our company when compared to the market. This risk-free return any way you want, because this you can earn without even taking any risk. And then for earning the return of the market, for example, risk-free rate 8% is there. Market rate, it is getting you are getting 10% return in the market. For getting this extra 2%, you are taking the market risk. This extra 2% you are getting in the stock market. If you invest in the stock market more than the risk-free rate, this 2% is called as the risk premium, market risk premium. Risk-free rate. Here you can see risk-free rate you are getting 5%, market return you are getting 10%. Now how much extra return you are getting because of taking the risk of the market? 5% extra you are getting by investing in the market. That is called as the market risk premium. The premium return which you are getting extra return because of taking the market risk. That is the market risk premium. And then from this market risk premium, when you multiply by the beta factor, you will know how much risk we are having in our company, and for that how much premium return we want. From risk-free rate, you are getting 5% extra return if you are investing in the market. The market beta is 1. Now, our company beta is 1.5. For a beta of 1, you want extra 5% return. But when you are having a beta of 1.5, you want 5 into 1.5, more extra return, because you are having more risk than the market. You want extra return of 7.5. This 7.5 you want more than the risk-free rate. So the total return you want is 5 plus 7.5. 12.5. This is the total return you want. That is what we are finding out in this equation also. Risk-free rate you want. And then in the market, if you invest, how much extra return you are getting? Market risk premium. When you multiply it by beta, you are getting the total premium return which you want for your particular stock. That is called as the equity risk premium. You can also call it as the stock risk premium, also known as the security risk premium. This risk-free rate plus risk premium for the risk which you are taking. The risk which you are taking, you are comparing with the market and you are finding by the beta factor how much risk you want you are having in your your particular company. For that, you are asking that extra premium percentage that is over and above the risk-free rate. So when you add all this, you will get the required return. Just you need to remember that risk-free rate will be given, return of the market will be given, beta factor of the company will be given. You have to add this, you have to substitute in this equation and add this all to get the required rate of return. This is the required rate of return of the equity investor. So that's all about the capital asset pricing model. Now the next topic which we are going to see is discount rate selection. What is the discount rate selection? We have two types of cash flows that you need to understand. Two types of cash flows which we are categorizing based on inflation effect. For example, what is inflation? The increase in price day after day or year after year. That is the inflation. The value of the money is reducing, the price of the product is increasing. For example, we can take a business. For every year they are selling units. They are manufacturing products and selling it to customers. In first year, they sold a total of 10,000 units. Second year, 15,000 units. Third year, 20,000 units. It is steadily growing. The sales price per unit also, and in the first year, they kept the price as 10 rupees. In the second year, due to inflation, the price went up and they charged it 12 rupees. The next year after that, they charged 14 rupees. How here, the total sales revenue also, you can find it out for each year. When you compare 2 years, year 1 and 2, you are comparing 80,000 extra revenue you earned. How this extra revenue came? Part of this extra revenue came because you sold extra 5,000 units. A portion of the revenue also came because of the increase in price. Inflation effect also is there in this revenue. That is what I am going to tell you here. That increase in inflation, that inflation effect also is there. That is why it is called as the nominal cash flow. Whenever you see the word nominal, you can understand that inflation effect is also there inside that cash flow. The price increase effect also is there. But when you are seeing real cash flow, what is the meaning of real cash flow? In that real cash flow, there will not be any effect of inflation. In that same thing, you are taking the number of units sold same only, but the selling price, you are taking the base selling price only. The same selling price in the first year, you are taking it for all the 3 years. You are not adding the effect of the price increase. So it is called as the real cash flow. This is the real revenue. This will not include the inflation. This extra revenue you are getting 50,000 only because of the extra units sold. No effect because of inflation. Now these two types of cash flow we saw. When you are bringing nominal cash flow to present value, you have to use a nominal discount rate. Discount rate which also includes inflation effect. When you are bringing real cash flow to present value, you have to use real discount rate. The discount rate without considering inflation. That you have to see. Here we have to understand that how to calculate the nominal discount rate when you are having real discount rate and inflation. Just you will have the real discount rate in the question or nominal discount rate in the question, and then you will have another data, that is the inflation percentage. Here you should be able to convert the discount rate. Only then you can change the discount rate and discount to the proper cash flows. Here for example, you are getting a real discount rate of 10% and then inflation 5% they have given. How to find out the nominal discount rate? Just remember the simple formula, 1 plus real discount rate into 1 plus inflation. This two factor when you multiply, you will get the nominal discount rate. Real discount rate is 10%, 0.10. 1 plus 0.10, 1.10. Inflation 1.05 because 1 plus 5%. When you multiply these two in the calculator, you will get 1.155. This 1.155, you can do minus 1, you will get 0.155. You have to multiply by 100, you will get 15.5% as the percentage of nominal discount rate. So this is the nominal discount rate that we found out. Here one mistake point is that you should not directly do real discount rate 10, inflation 5, 15 will be the nominal discount rate. That you should not do. This is a very wrong method. This may cost you some marks in the exam if you do this, because that will give you the wrong answer. Why that is the wrong answer is that this inflation you are getting on both principal and in the real return you are getting. For example, you are getting the price to be 100, the present value 100 you are getting. You are using the real discount rate 1.10. You want a real return of 10 rupees. 100 is the present value, 10 is the real return you want. So totally 110 you want in the end of first year. This inflation, it will affect both this 100 rupees principal and in the real return 10 you are getting. So both of this should include the effect of inflation. That is the nominal discount rate. So you cannot just add it to the 10% alone and then find it out. You have to add it to the principal also. Here this inflation factor also we are multiplying by 1 plus the real discount rate. This 1 will be the principal which we are having in the current time. This real discount rate will give the real return. Both in principal and real return we will have the effect of inflation. If you do not understand this logic, no problem, just use this formula, 1 plus real discount rate into 1 plus inflation. So that's all about the concept of discount rate which you have to use for discounting the cash flows. That explanation I have given you in the form of example here. You can pause the video and read that if you want. Now we can start the concept of equity share valuation. What is the value of the equity share that we are going to find out in this topic? How to find out the value of the equity share? For that we have different model. Dividend based model. Here the main thing which we are going to consider is dividend. Earnings based model is the main factor is earnings. Focus will be on earnings. Cash flow based model, the focus will be on the cash flow of the business, whether the business is earning cash profit or not, that we are going to see. In dividend based model and earning based model, it will be for small investor also, it will be okay. But cash flow based model, who will be using it? When you are purchasing an entire business, you will be calculating whether that business will be profitable in the future, whether we will get cash flow from that business in the future. That you will see when you are purchasing an entire company. So this cash flow based model will be mainly relevant in business valuation or corporate valuation when you are finding out the value of an entire company. So this we will cover in the topic of business valuation. In this video, we will not cover the cash flow based models. Even though it is given in the study material under security valuation topic only, we will not cover it in this video. We can cover it as a part of business valuation. Now we can start with dividend based model. And in equity share valuation, one important point which you need to remember is that the return which you are getting in equity share is always nominal. Whatever the return you are getting, it is always nominal because inflation effect and all will be there in the equity share. So you have to use the nominal discount rate for discounting the equity share returns, whatever the future cash flow which you are getting from equity share. Now, dividend based model, before knowing that, you need to know some basics about the company. What is dividend and from which dividend is being paid? What is earning per share? How to find out that you need to understand. For that, we can see about the basic statements of company. Income statement and balance sheet, we can see an overview. Here, this is the balance sheet of a company. This is not in Schedule 3 format and all. Just for financial management, how you can understand this. In that format only, this balance sheet is there. So don't expect proper formatting as per Companies Act Schedule 3 and all. Just for understanding this balance sheet I have prepared. Here you can see one side we have assets, another side we have liabilities. In liabilities, what and all we will have? Equity share capital we will have, reserves and surplus we will have. These two things, this is the property or belongings of the equity shareholders. These two amount are the investment of the equity shareholder. Equity shareholders are the persons who are the owners of this amount, this 10 lakh. Equity shareholder are the owners. For this preference share capital, preference shareholders are the owner of this amount. Preference shareholders are the people who are having the right to claim this amount. So 5 lakh is the amount of the preference shareholder. And then this long-term debt. This is the amount provided by the loans for financial institutions or debenture holder or bond holder. Those are the people who are responsible, who are having a right for this 4 lakh amount. So you need to see which amount is provided by which person. For equity shareholder, these two amount. Preference shareholder, this amount. Long-term debt will be for debenture holder and bond holder. So this you need to understand first. This amount, for example, you can take we are having in year 0. Today we are having, this is the position of our company balance sheet. This amount, this resources, all this amount we will be using in our business. You will be operating for 1 year. After the end of 1 year, you will see what is the result we are having, how much profit we earn, how much revenue we made. For that, we are preparing income statement. We will be manufacturing product, we will be selling that, we will be getting sales revenue from that. We will be collecting money from the people, from our customer, we will get the sales revenue. Out of that sales revenue, we will first pay for the cost of goods sold. We will pay for the purchasing of the materials, raw material, processing cost, manufacturing cost, everything we will pay. That is the cost of the goods sold. After that, we will get the gross profit after paying the cost of goods sold. Then we have to pay the other operating expenses like rent, machinery, like that. Now, those expenses which you have to pay. So that will be the operating expenses. Other than depreciation, you have to first reduce. And then depreciation also you have to reduce. These you have to reduce from the gross profit. This depreciation, that is also an operating expense. In operating expense, all this will come. Cost of goods sold will also come. Other operating expense will also come. Depreciation will also come. Just we are keeping it separately to understand what are the elements which we are reducing. What are the expenses that we are paying. So when you reduce all this from gross profit, what you will get? PBIT will be the remaining amount. You got the sales revenue, reduced the operating expenses, all operating expenses. Now you got the operating profit. Sales revenue minus operating expenses will be equal to operating profit. That is the PBIT, profit before interest and tax. From that you will reduce the interest expense. For that loan, we got that loan and we will pay the interest. That we will reduce. After that, we will get the profit before tax. After that, we will reduce the tax expense. We will get the profit after tax. This is the amount which will be given to the shareholders of the company. From this only, we will pay to the shareholders. First, we will pay to the preference shareholder because they are the ones who are having a preference. Preference dividend we will pay. After that, we will have the residual amount, the remaining amount. That is the amount that is available for equity shareholder. This entire amount is the property of the equity shareholder. This is the amount which we have to pay to the equity shareholder. Now we have to decide whether this earnings for equity shareholder, now itself we can transfer it to the investor, equity shareholder, or we can pay it later. We can keep it inside the company itself. After that, we can pay it in the future. Currently, we are giving it out, or you can give it out in the future. That you have to decide. That is the decision you are taking when you are deciding between dividend and retained earnings. Dividend means now itself you are distributing the earnings, distributed earnings of the company. If you are keeping it as retained earnings, you are keeping it in the business itself. You are reinvesting in the business itself. You are not distributing to the investor. So that's all you need to know about the income statement. Here, for debenture holder or debt holder or bond holder, what is the amount they are contributing to the company? Long-term debt or debenture debt. So that is the amount contributed by the debenture holder. For them, what we are giving in back, interest on loan we are giving, that is the return that they are getting. This interest on loan, we are paying it out of PBIT. Step by step, we are paying each and every expense. From PBIT only, we are paying out the interest expense. That is the source for the payment of interest. And then preference shareholder, when they are getting, they have contributed the preference share capital amount to our company. For that, we are giving preference dividend as a reward for them. This preference dividend, after making all the expense one by one, we are paying it out of profit after tax. From this amount only, we are reducing the preference dividend. We are paying the preference dividend out of profit after tax only. Now, what is the equity shareholder property? They are investing equity share capital plus reserves and surplus. These two amount are the property of equity shareholders. For them, what we are giving in back? We are giving the earnings available for equity shareholder. This is the entire earnings which we are going to give it to the equity shareholder. This we can also call it as equity dividend plus retained earnings. Equity dividend we will immediately distribute it. Retained earnings we will give it in the future. So these are the return that the equity shareholder is getting. Now we can see at the end of first year, after doing all the operation, this much amount we are having for equity shareholder after paying all the expenses, dividend, interest on loan, everything. Now this we have to distribute to the shareholder. We have a total of 1 lakh, we can say. No, we can take 2 lakh as the example. 2 lakh we are having the earnings available for equity shareholder. We decided that 1 lakh we will pay the dividend now, and then 1 lakh we will keep it in the business itself. We will invest in the business itself, reinvest. So this 1 lakh will be going out of the company. This remaining 1 lakh we will be having. How this will be reflecting in the balance sheet? This will be added to the reserves and surplus. Here 0 you are having 2 lakh reserves, and then after adding the 1 lakh retained earnings, you are having 3 lakh reserves. So this reserves will be the one that will be increasing when you are earning a return and retaining it. Retained earnings will be added to the reserves and surplus. So that's all about the important points which you need to understand about the statements of the company. Some important ratios also you need to know. Like EPS. EPS will be the earnings available for equity shareholder divided by number of shares. Earnings per share. It is the earnings of the equity shareholder. This amount will be the earnings for the equity shareholder. When you divide it by number of share, you will get the earnings per share. This earnings available for equity shareholder, how you got? PAT you are doing, from that preference dividend you are reducing. This is the amount that you are getting for earnings available for equity shareholder. So for EPS, you can find it out using that formula. Now, what is return on equity? We already saw that equity shareholder, what amount they contributed to the company, equity share capital plus reserves. What is the return we are giving to them? Earnings available for equity shareholder. So this is the formula for return on equity. This is the equity in the denominator, return will be on the numerator, return on equity. So this formula you can remember. This is the actual return that the company is earning and giving it to the equity shareholder. Actual return earned by the company for the equity shareholder. The next thing is we can see the proportion between equity dividend and retained earnings. For example, you are earning 1 lakh as earnings available for equity shareholder. Out of that, equity dividend you have to pay, retained earnings you have to keep some proportion. This equity dividend, how much you are paying, that will be decided by the dividend payout ratio. That is one ratio which will be given in the question, which will be decided by the company. Out of the earnings which we earned, how much we have to distribute to the shareholder. That is called as the dividend payout ratio. And then how much you have to keep it inside the company itself, how much you have to retain. That will be called as the retention ratio. This retention ratio they are denoting using the letter B. So obviously retention ratio is P, and then the total is 1. And then the dividend how much you will be paying? 1 minus P. This is the proportion in which you will be dividing the earnings which you earned. For example, 40% you are taking as dividend payout ratio, then total 1 lakh you will pay 40,000. 40,000 as dividend you will pay. But 60% you will retain it. This will be the retained earnings. This when you can do it in the total thing also. You can also do it in the per share basis. This earning available for equity shareholder, when you divide by number of share, you will get the earnings per share. In the earning per share also, you can use the dividend payout ratio and in the retention ratio to find out how much is the dividend per share that you are receiving, how much is the retained earning per share that the company is keeping. That you can see using this. Now, the next thing is growth rate of the company that we have to see. What is the growth rate of the company? Every year, whatever the company is earning, some proportion it is giving it to the shareholder immediately as dividend. Some proportion it is keeping inside the company itself as retained earnings. In that retained earnings, next year, when you see in the year 0, the company invested all this amount and started earning the profit. 2 lakh it invested, 10 lakh of the equity shareholder fund it used. And in year 1, when you see, after adding the retained earnings to the reserves and surplus, the equity shareholder fund increased by 1 lakh. We got 11 lakh as the equity shareholder fund, equity share capital plus reserves and surplus at the end of first year. So the equity share holder fund, equity share capital plus reserves and surplus, it increased by 10%. This is the growth that we are talking about. This growth why we are getting? Because we are reinvesting the retained earnings. We are reinvesting the retained earnings, and that in this retained earnings also we are getting the return on equity. We are using that amount also to do the business and earning the return. In retained earnings also we are adding, and that in that ROE also we are earning, and that because of that our equity shareholder fund is growing. That is the growth rate. For example, here you can take 8 lakh and 2 lakh we are having at year 0. Total equity shareholder fund is 10 lakh we are having. At year 1 and if you see, return on equity we earned actually 20%. So how much return we earned? 20% on the equity fund, 10 lakh. 2 lakh amount we actually earned. We took equity dividend to be 50%. 50% we are paying out as dividend payout ratio. Retention ratio we are keeping 50%. So 1 lakh, 1 lakh. Now this 1 lakh retained earnings it will be added to the reserves and surplus. When you see capital will be the same, reserves and surplus will be getting an extra 1 lakh. So 3 lakh will be the reserves. Now at the end of year 1, what will be the total equity shareholder fund? 11 lakh. It increased by 10%. Year 0 it was 10 lakh. Now it is 11 lakh. It increased by 10%. The 10% is the growth rate. You can do this like this, or in another method you can shortcut. You can calculate the growth rate directly. You can use ROE into retention ratio. Actual return that the company is earning multiplied by the how much amount they are retaining. That B factor we can use it as the retention ratio. That is the retention ratio. 20% return on equity, 50% retention ratio. When you multiply by that, you will get 10% as the growth rate. That is the growth rate at which the equity shareholder fund will grow. This you can do it on a total basis also. You can do it on a per share basis also. This they will call it as book value per share. The total equity shareholder fund you are having 10 lakh rupees. For example, we can take you are having 1 lakh shares. So the book value per share will be 10 rupees. And then at the end of year 1, you are having 11 lakh equity shareholder fund. That when you are dividing by 1 lakh share, you will get 11 rupees. So here also the growth rate will be 10% only. On a per share basis also, the growth rate will be same. So that's all about the basics of dividend. And one more thing is that how the company will be expressing the dividend, how much dividend they are giving. They will give in the question in 3 manner. That also you need to understand to know how much dividend they are giving to calculate the amount. They will express it in 3 forms. First thing is dividend percentage. When it is given to that, the just 12% dividend, like that, just this only is given. Dividend percentage is given. This will be applied on the face value. Generally, dividend will be declared on the face value of the company only. If just a percentage dividend is given, you have to apply it in the face value and find out the dividend. 100 rupees face value, 12% means 12 rupees will be the dividend. Now, the next term is dividend payout ratio. As we already saw, this will be the ratio of the earnings which they are paying. Out of the earnings of the company, how much they are paying. That dividend payout ratio percentage, you have to apply it on the earnings available for equity shareholder or the earnings per share. On that only you have to put that 40%. So when you're taking dividend payout ratio, it should be done on the earnings of the company or the earnings per share. Only then you will get the dividend properly. And then the next thing is dividend yield. That is also one more term which will be used in the question. What is the meaning of dividend yield? Yield means return. The meaning of the word yield is return. This dividend yield will be normally calculated by the investor who is purchasing the share. That person, investor, will calculate the return based on the amount of investment he made. For example, if he purchased the share for 120 rupees and then at the end of 1 year he got dividend of 15 rupees, he will see how much dividend yield he got, how much amount of dividend he got on the actual amount he invested. That percentage will be called as the dividend yield. So you have to see the formula so to calculate the proper dividend and in which value you have to apply that percentage. So that's all about the dividend. Now we can see the dividend based model one by one. Now in dividend based model, the main return of the investor is dividend. Dividend will be our main focus. Here we have different models. For example, if the holding period is only 1 year you are going to hold the share. Now you are purchasing, at the end of first year you will sell it. Now what is the cash flow which you are getting? At the end of first year you will get 1 year dividend. And then the price you are going to, the price at which you are going to sell the share at the end of 1 year. At the end of 1 year, you will sell it in the market. Then you will get the share, the price of the share, the market price of the share, and then you will also get the dividend for holding it for 1 year. These are the two cash flow that you are going to get if you are holding the dividend, holding the share only for 1 year. This you have to bring it to present value using the required rate of return that will be given in the question, or else you have to find it out using the capital asset pricing model. That data will also be given in the question if the question is thinking you to calculate on that manner. You have to bring this to the present value. How to bring that to present value? Just add the total cash flow in the numerator. In the denominator, you have to add the factor 1 plus required rate of return to the power time. 1 year, so you can bring it to the present value and find out the market price easily. So this is the present value of the future cash flow, or else you can also call it as this should be the theoretical market price of the share. Market price of the share also will be calculated by discounting the future cash flows only. Now when you are having multi-year holding period, you are holding for more than 1 year. Here we are having different models. First thing is zero growth. Every year you will be getting a dividend of 10 rupees constantly. There is no change in that. Till infinity you will be holding that share only, you will not sell it. Till infinity you will get a 10 rupees dividend every year. Now how to calculate the present value of this all this 10? You can either do it using calculator. This 10 then the first year pull it back 1 year. This 10 pull it for 2 years back. This 10 pull it 3 years back, this 10 pull it 4 years back. Like that you can do till infinity. That is not possible. But you can do it for a reasonable amount of period. For 1 year, at the end of first year, when you are getting 10 rupees, at required rate of return of 5%, the present value is 9.52. At the end of 4 years, if at 10 rupees you are getting, the present value is 8.23. The present value is reducing when as the time passes. So, at the end of 20 years, if you are getting at 10 rupees, the present value is 3.77. At the end of 100 years, if you are getting 10 rupees, the present value is 0.08 rupees, 8 paise. Now, at the end of 140 years, when you are getting 10 rupees, the present value of that today is 0.01, just 1 paise. So, up to from 150 years, you are getting a meaningful cash flow. After that, the amount is getting reduced to a very inconsequential amount. So, we need not calculate that much. Till 150 years, you have to discount it. If you do that, you will get approximately 200 rupees. If you do all this, you will get 199.99, 200 you will get. But this is a long cut method. As a shortcut method, what we can do, when you are pulling the discount, pulling the cash flow of 1 year, when you are, this is first year end, you are getting 10 rupees, what you will do, 10 divided by 1.05 power 1. You are adding 1 plus the discount rate for pulling it for 1 year. But when you are pulling a cash flow which you are getting till infinity, you have to use just the discount rate. When you do that, you will easily get the present value. 10 is the cash flow which you are getting every year divided by the discount rate, just 5%. 10 divided by 5%, 10 divided by 0.05. You will get 200 rupees as the present value or the market price. So this is what you have to do in the constant dividend, zero growth model. No growth is there in the dividend. Every year, same amount only you are getting as dividend. Now the next model which you are going to see is constant growth model. Earlier we had only same dividend amount every year, but now we will be having a growth. The growth will be there in the dividend every year. Currently, for the current year, you are getting a dividend of 10 rupees. For the year which just ended, you are getting 10 rupees dividend. So, you are getting a growth per annum of 3% every year. So, currently you are getting 10%. At the end of first year, what dividend you will get? 10 into 1 plus 0.3. Or you can take 10 plus 3%. So, when you add 3% to the current year dividend, you will get the dividend at the end of first year. 10.30 you will get. Again, when you add one more 3%, you will get second year end dividend, then third year end dividend, then fourth year end dividend. Like that, you will get dividend which will be growing constantly. Every year it will be growing by a same percentage. Now, how to bring all this to present value? Same like that, you can bring every year also. You can have another shortcut also. In the same formula which we had for constant dividend, no growth dividend, what was the formula? Dividend divided by required rate. This KE or RE which we are using in the denominator, that is the required rate of return. That is nothing but the required rate of return. That is what denoted by KE and RE. The same thing, when you do minus G in the denominator, you will get the formula for the constant growth dividend. Every year you are getting a growth in the dividend. Then you have to add a G in the denominator. The dividend at the end of first year you have to take D1. This 10.3 dividend at the end of first year you have to take, divided by required rate of return you have to take, minus G. G is the growth rate which you are doing every year. Same thing, D1 by RE minus G. Same if you have no growth in the dividend, just dividend by required rate of return. When you are having constant growth, every year growth is there, you have to add minus G to the denominator. You will get the present value. This is the market price of the share, present value of all the future cash flow that you are going to get. So that's all about the constant growth model. All this when you are doing, when you are using this formula, what you are getting? D1 by RE minus G. Dividend at the end of first year you are taking, you are discounting all that to present value. All the infinity till the cash flow which you are getting till infinity, you are discounting using the discount rate. And then G growth rate also you are considering. Now you are getting the present value. Present value means 0th year price. What is the price of the share today? That is will be denoted by P0. Price at the end of 0th year. Currently today what is the price? Now if you want the price at the end of first year, what you have to do? You have to start from D2. When calculating P0, what you did? D1 by RE minus G. So when you want P1, what you have to do? Instead of D1, you have to take D2 by RE minus G. P1 is the price at the end of first year. D2 is the dividend you are getting at the end of second year. When you start the discounting of dividend from second year, you will get the present value price at the end of first year. When you are starting from the dividend from first year, you are getting today's price. So when you are taking the dividend, you are starting the first dividend which you are discounting. If it is of the second year end, you will get the price at the end of first year. Similarly, when you take the start the discounting from D3 divided by RE minus G, you will get the price at the end of second year. P2 you will get. So just this is the formula. P0 is equal to D1 by RE minus G. If you want P3, what you have to do? Next year, D4 by RE minus G you have to do. Dividend at the end of fourth year divided by RE minus T. You will get the price at the end of third year. So this is what you have to understand. You have to change the formula like that to find out the price for different years. Now this is the constant growth in dividend. Every year the growth is 3% only. No problem in the growth. Growth will not change. Now the next model which you are going to see, you will have a change in the growth. First few years you will have high growth. After that you will get a stable growth. In that manner, in that situation, how to calculate the present value? That is called as the two-stage dividend discount model. Dividend paid in the current year. Just the year just ended, you have paid 4 rupees dividend. This is the dividend at the end of 0th year. D is 0. Now if you want to find out the dividend at the end of first year, you have to multiply by the growth factor. D0 into 1 plus T. Here the growth is 20% for 2 years they have given. Now 4 rupees is the current dividend. For 2 years you will have 20%. So 4 you will have 20% growth, and then again you will have 20% growth. So the dividend at the end of first year is 4.8. You are adding the growth. After 2 years, after 20% growth for 2 years, the growth will be 10% forever. Constantly every year 10% growth will be there. Now the required return is 15%. You have to find out the P0, current market price. Today market price you have to find out. 4 is the today's the dividend for the year just ended. 20% at the end of first year you will get 4.80 dividend. 20% growth you will get 5.76 at the end of second year as dividend. And then after that you will get only 10% growth. You have to add 10% to 5.76. You will get 6.336 as the dividend at the end of third year. Again when you add the 10% you will get a dividend at the end of fourth year as 6.9696. So like this growth will be constant 10% from second year. For 2 years 20% growth, after that 10% growth till infinity. Here what you can do, till this from third year you can say that we have a constant growth. We can use the model which we saw already, because constant growth model same growth rate should be there. From third year we can see, that we have constant growth. For that model formula we can use for discounting the cash flow from third year till infinity, that we can bring it to present value using the constant growth. When you are using D3, from third year only you are starting the discounting, because from third year only you are getting the constant growth. So what you have to do? You have to do D3 divided by RE minus T. When you do D3 by RE minus T, what you will get? P2 you will get. What is P2? Price at the end of second year. So when you discount all this using the required rate of return and the growth rate, you will get the price at the end of second year. Now what you are getting? You are having first year dividend, second year dividend, and second year you are having the price also. This three, when you are discounting it to the present value, you will get the total market price, total present value of the cash flow. First what we did, this portion we saw that we are having same growth, 10% constant growth we are having, that we are bringing it to present value, and then by doing that you are seeing that the amount is coming and falling in P2. At the end of second year you are getting the price by discounting all this cash flow. After that, when you are taking this 2 dividend and then the price at the end of second year and bringing it back to present value, this will give you the present value at the end of 0th year. That you have to do using the discount rate of 15%. For this third year, fourth year, this cash flow you brought with D3 by RE minus T constant growth formula. This you normally brought it by 4.8 divided by 1.15 to the power 1, 5.76 divided by 1.15 to the power 2. This also you brought to present value using the same normal discounting. Like that, when you bring it to discounting, when you do discounting and bring it to present value, you are getting 104.35. That is the P0 or current market price of the share. That formula, what we are doing is that just price at the end of second year we are calculating. How we are calculating? From third year till infinity, all the dividend we are discounting and we are getting P2. That we are bringing to present value for 2 years. And then dividend 1 and dividend 2 also, we are bringing it to present value. So that's all about the variable growth in dividend. We are also having another discount model, dividend discount model, that is 3-stage dividend discount model, that we will be seeing at last. Now we can start with earning based models. In this, the main focus is earnings. We will be focusing more on earnings when calculating the present value or the market price. First model which we are having is Gordon's growth model. Here, this is similar to the dividend growth model, but here we will be going to the dividend through EPS. We will be having the EPS at the end of first year. That EPS, we will be multiplying the dividend payout ratio. Out of that, how much dividend we are getting, that we will calculate. That will be in the numerator. In the denominator, you will have the required rate of return minus growth rate. How you are getting that growth rate? You are multiplying the return on equity and in the retention ratio. Return on equity they are denoting by R. Retention ratio they are denoting by B. So BR they are using it in the denominator. KE required rate of return minus growth rate BR. So that will be the denominator. When you see normally it will be coming in the same format as D1 dividend at the end of first year. EPS 1 when you multiply by the dividend payout ratio, you will get dividend at the end of first year D1 divided by KE minus G. Same logic only as dividend growth model, but they are going through EPS. Just that the presentation of the formula is different. When they are asking using the earnings model, you have to use this only. Now the next model which you are going to see is Walter's approach. Here we will not have any growth and all, but we will have one extra thing which you are going to see. For example, we can take that the book value per share is 137.8. What is the book value per share? We already saw that earning equity share capital plus reserves and surplus. When you divide it by the number of share, you will get the book value per share. That is the amount of the investment of equity shareholder. Like that you can take it. In that, return on equity is 15%. Return on equity, it will be earned on the equity share capital plus reserves and surplus only on a total basis. When you see on a per share basis, this return on equity percentage you want to apply on the book value per share. Only then you will get the return on EPS. When you multiply the book value per share and then the return on equity percentage, you will get the EPS, earnings per share. Now the retention ratio is 60% and then opportunity cost of capital. This is the required rate of return. Now using this data, we can calculate the EPS at the end of first year. This book value per share that we are having currently. You are investing this amount, you are using this amount and doing the business and getting this much return. This return you will get at the end of first year. So when you multiply these two, 137.8 multiplied by 15%, you will get the EPS at the end of first year. That is 20.67. So the EPS is at the end of the first year. First year end, you are getting 20.67 EPS. Out of that, 60% is retention ratio, 40% is dividend payout ratio. So 40% when you multiply, you will get 8.268 as dividend. And then remaining 60% you will reinvest in the company itself. It will be going to the reserves and surplus. It is the retained earnings. Here we are not having any growth. Every year the same EPS we will be getting, same dividend we will be declaring to the equity shareholders, same amount we will be retaining as earnings every year. Year 1 earnings, how we got book value at year 0 into return on equity. Now after that, this year 1 you are retaining 12.402. This you will invest this also in the company, and then next year the same return on equity you will earn on this original book value also you will earn, this extra retained earnings also you will earn. In this, what is extra that is happening? In the retained earnings, you are earning the return on equity. This 12.402, now you invested in the company. Now from now on, from every next year end, you will start to earn return on equity on that retained earnings amount. First year you retained this much amount in that, you reinvested into the company. So in that reinvested amount, every year you will get 15% return. This 1.8603, how you got is that 12.402 every year you are retaining. For first year alone you can take it. Now first year you retained this much. In that again you will invest it and you will get 15% return on equity next year. This you will get every year. So this will be this cash flow you will be getting every year. This much you will earn extra return every year from retained earnings. So this is all this cash flow you are getting from the retained earnings of just year 1. In year 1 you retained this much. Out of that amount itself, every year you are getting this cash flow. This cash flow, this extra earnings you are bringing it to present value. That you can do it constant, you are getting a constant amount only. So 1.8603 divided by the required rate of return, you can do it. Here in this example, the required rate of return is 18%. So when you do 1.8603 divided by 0.18, you will get 10.335. This is the present value of all the extra earnings that you are getting by investing 12.402. And then in second year also you will get same EPS, you will get same retained earnings, you will get the same dividend. In the second year retained earnings also, you will start to earn the return on equity from third year. Same like that, you are retaining in the second year also. For that retained earnings, you are getting the extra return from the third year. That also when you bring it all to present value, you will get again 10.335. So that will be the present value of all the extra returns at the end of second year. Now third year also, you will retain this much. On that retained earnings in third year, you will get the extra return from fourth year. So that everything when you bring it to present value, that will come to 10.335 at the end of third year. So like this every year you are having 10.335. What is this 10.335? You are retaining some amount, you are reinvesting that, you are getting extra return. That extra return present value you are getting, that is 10.335. Like that every year you are getting 10.335 present value. So when you see as a combined tabular column, every year you are getting this EPS. Okay, every year you are doing this dividend. Okay, every year you are retaining this much. Alright, after that, this retained earnings you are doing, because of that you are getting extra return. The present value of that extra return also you are getting every year. So when you see all this, these are all the total cash flows or earnings which you are having in the company. Now what you have to discount? You have to discount the dividend. Normally you will be discounting only. What extra you are having here? Present value of that extra return. That also you should discount. So 8.268 plus 10.335. This is the cash flow which you are getting every year constantly. This you have to discount using cost of capital 0.18. So when you do this, you will get the price. Now you can see the answer. We are discounting the dividend every year what you are getting 8.26, right? And then this extra return, this everything, this two cash flows you are discounting every year. Every year you will get this. You are dividing it by the cost of capital, so you are bringing it to present value. The price is coming to 103.35. Here, this formula you can see here. This dividend we are discounting 8.268 directly. That is no problem. This cost of capital we are having in the denominator. That is also not a problem. This 10.335 how you are getting every year you are retaining some amount. What is the amount of retention? EPS you are earning. Out of that dividend you are paying. This EPS minus dividend they are denoting as E minus T. This is the amount which you are retaining every year. In that, you are earning return on equity, ROE. This is the earning which you are getting. That when you are discounting, that when you are bringing to present value, you have to do divide using the cost of capital one time. So when you do all this, you will get 10.335. So here we can see every year you are doing an EPS of 20.67 minus dividend how much you are doing 8.268. This will give you what? Retained earnings 12.402. In this you are earning the return on equity. What is the return on equity percentage? 15%. This what it will give you? It will give you 1.8603. This you are getting every year. So you have to divide this by the cost of equity 0.18 or the required rate of return you have to divide it. When you do this you will get the 10.335. That same thing only they have given in the formula also. Earnings minus dividend multiplied by return on equity divided by KE. This will give you the 10.335 value. Along with that, you have to add the dividend also, and these two will be in the numerator. You have to bring them to the present value by dividing using the discount rate. So that is what that is happening here. You can see the formula. Now the next model which you are going to see is price earnings ratio method. Here we will be calculating price earnings ratio based on past data, historical data. What is the price of the share? What was the earnings of the share? Based on past data, we will have the PE ratio. Based on this ratio, we can find out the current market price of a share. This ratio itself says that price divided by earnings. It is the formula for that ratio. Now they will give the data in the question. The PE ratio of the company is 8 times. The EPS of the company is 10 rupees currently. What is the market price of the share? They will ask you like this. Now, for getting the price from price earning ratio, you are getting the price earning ratio. You want the price alone. Now, what you have to do? You have to multiply by earnings. So earnings will cancel out and you will get the price alone. PE ratio multiplied by EPS. Price by earnings into earnings per share. Earnings and earnings will cancel out. You will get the price, current market price. So that is the formula I have to use for calculating the market price. PE ratio into EPS 10 into 8. 80 will be the current market price of the share as per the price earnings approach. Now we can start the concept of valuation of right shares. Here first we need to understand what is the meaning of right issue. What is the meaning of right issue? We will have a company, the shareholders will already be there. We want a new amount, we want to raise capital, we want to issue new shares. First we will give the new shares to the existing shareholder itself, whether they are buying or not, that we will see. We will give the offer to the existing shareholders. Whether they are buying or not we will see. After that we will give it to the new shareholders. First preference will be given when we are issuing shares to the existing shareholders. So we will give the preference to the existing shareholders. We will issue the shares also at a discounted price. At a low price, we will issue the shares to the existing shareholders. That is the meaning of right issue. For example, if we can take a balance sheet before right issue for a company, the current market price of a share in the market, stock market, is 13 rupees. Total 10 lakh shares are outstanding now. When you see the in a balance sheet approach, you can see that this 13 rupees that is representing the net assets of the company. Share capital plus reserves only, that is the equity shareholders amount that is there in the company. That is represented by the market price in the stock market. So this market price you can take it as it is representing the net assets of the company. You can also take it as net asset value per share, like that you can consider. So the total net assets that is there in the company, that is 1 crore 30 lakh. How you got it? Total 13 rupees market price per share, 10 lakh shares are outstanding. So this much will be the representative of the net assets. After that, when you see here, how we are getting the share price, net assets by number of share. This much net asset we are having, 10 lakh share we are having, you are getting 13. So this is what you have to understand, the situation before the right issue. After right issue, what will happen? The company declared right share, 1 right share for every 2 share held. If you are having 2 share, I will give you 1 right share. Totally there are 10 lakh shares. So 10 lakh into 1 by 2. This will be the number of right shares. So 5 lakh will be the number of right shares. So here if you see, we had 10 lakh earlier and 5 lakh right shares we are issuing. So after the right issue, we will have 15 lakh shares. Now the company decided that we want to collect 20 lakh rupees using the right issue. We want to issue a total of 5 lakh shares. And totally we want to collect rupees 20 lakh. So from 1 share, how much we have to collect? That is what we are finding out by dividing. From 1 share, we have to collect 4 rupees. For 1 right share, the price we have to keep is 4 rupees. So totally we will get 20 lakh rupees by issuing 5 lakh right shares. Now what will happen after the right issue? The net assets we are having, that we will get the extra cash from right issue, 20 lakh which we raised. And then in share capital also that 20 lakh will be added, and we will get have a total of 15 lakh shares also after the right issue. Now when you see the value per share, net asset value per share or the ex-right price, 1 crore 50 lakh, this is the total net asset we are having divided by the number of shares, 15 lakh. So this will be the share price after the right issue. Share price after the right issue, earlier it was 15. Earlier the share price was 13. Market price before right issue was 13, but after right issue it became 10. 13 became 10. The share price reduced in the market. This is what we found out. This 10 rupees is the price of the share in the market after the right issue. This we can also call it as theoretical X right price. Market price of the share after the right issue. Net assets after the right issue divided by the total number of shares outstanding after the right issue. Here, the value of the right also we have to see. This right share, the company will give offer to the right shareholder, whether you can buy it at the discounted price if you exercise the option. The shareholder has three options. Either he can exercise it, he can buy the shares at a low price, or else he can ignore the right issue also. He will not buy, he will not sell the right also, he will ignore it. The other option is he can sell this right. He is not buying the share himself, but this right to buy the share at a discounted price that he is selling to other person. That also we can do. These are the three options of the shareholder. Now when we try to sell this right to some other people, how much will be the maximum price that they will be ready to pay? What is the price of the share after right issue? After right issue, the price of the share in the market is 10 rupees. But when I have this right, I can buy the share at 4 rupees. We already saw that 20 lakh we want to raise. The price of right share is 4 rupees. The market price of the share is 10 rupees after the right issue. When I have the right, I can buy the share at 4 rupees. So how much will be the maximum amount that I am getting profit because of that right? 6 rupees I can get the discount in the price of the share because I am having that right. This 6 rupees will be the profit if I have the right. So this is the maximum amount that I will be ready to pay to buy the right. If I don't have any share in the company, I don't have any right also. Now if I want to go and purchase the share of the company in the market, I have to pay 10 rupees. But if I have the right, I can buy the share at 4 rupees. I will have a 6 rupees profit if I have the right. That right, when I can purchase it, I will give maximum 6 rupees only, because that is the profit that I am getting maximum from the right. So this is the value of the right. How you will get the value of the right? X right price minus the subscription price of the right share. You will get as the value of the right. This when you divide by the existing number of share. You want 2 shares currently, only then you will get 1 right. So when you divide this right value by number of shares, 2 shares, you will get that 3 rupees is the value of right per share basis. So that's all about the valuation of right shares. Like this you can do it in a total basis also. On a total basis, total number of shares outstanding can take into account and do that. In another method, you can do, if you want 1 right share, how much existing share you want. Total you should have 2 ordinary shares currently. After that, you will get 1 share in the right issue. So totally you will have 3 share. In this you can take it as you are a shareholder having 2 share currently before the right issue, and then you are getting 1 right share. By assuming like that also you can do it. 2 existing share you are having, 1 right share you are having. The market price of the share currently is 13 rupees. 2 is the number of share which you are having. This is the current market price of the share that you are having. And then this is the right share and the amount that you are collecting using the right share. For 1 right share, the company is collecting 4 rupees. So 4 rupees will be added to the numerator. Divided by total you are having 3 share. In that also if you do that, you will get exactly 10 rupees as the answer. Again when you calculate the value of right, you will get 6 and 3 respectively. So you can calculate the value of right and theoretical X right price by taking into the account total number of shares also, or you can consider like this example and you can also do this in this method. Now we can start about the valuation of preference share concept. Here this is very simple. Just the present value of future cash flow you are going to bring it. That is the current market price of the preference share. That is the simple logic which you can see for valuation of preference share. For example, we are having a preference share, face value is 100, dividend is 10%, the required rate of return, the discount rate is 12%, the term of the share is 5 years. It will be redeemed at par. Here if you see, every year you will get 10 rupees dividend, and then at the end you will get 100 rupees maturity proceeds also. When you bring all that to present value, 92.79 will be the current market price of the share. That's all about the valuation of preference share if it is a redeemable preference share. When you are having a non-redeemable preference share, it will be there, but maturity will not be there. Every year, same dividend you will have. So you can divide it by the discount rate and find out the price of share easily. So that's all about the valuation of preference share. Now we are having the valuation of debenture and bond. That is also a very similar thing only. Present value of future cash flow at required rate of return. That only thing which you need to understand to bring the market price of the debenture and bond. Now we are having the bond details here. Face value is 100. 8% is the coupon interest rate. That interest rate will be, that percentage will be applied on the face value. That will be the interest you will be receiving every year. It will be redeemed at par on maturity. Face value you will get it back on maturity properly. 5 years will be the term. The required rate of return is 12%. Here if you see, every year you will get 8 rupees coupon interest. At the end of the period you will get 100 rupees maturity proceeds. When you bring all that to present value, the price of the share at zero, price of the debenture or bond at 0th year, currently today, it is 85.58. Same thing you are bringing into present value. If you want the price at the end of first year, what will happen? You have to discount all the cash flow from second year to fifth year. When you discount all that, you will get price at the end of first year. And when you discount the cash flow from third, fourth, and fifth year, it will come to second year. You will get the price at the end of second year. If you want the price at the end of third year, you have to discount the cash flow from the remaining 2 years. And when you want price at the end of fourth year, then discount the remaining cash flows. When you want the price at the end of fifth year, it will be the maturity proceeds. Just all the cash flows are completed, just the maturity proceeds is remaining. So that will be the price of the share at the end of fifth year. Earlier in the first calculation, if you see, currently the price is 85.58. And year after year, it increased and it approached the maturity proceeds. 100 rupees it became at the end of fifth year. That is what you can see here. The bond price every year it is increasing slightly, slowly, gradually. It is increasing rupees by rupees, and then it is reaching 100 rupees at the end of fifth year. So the bond price, at whatever price it is there currently, it will approach the maturity proceeds at the end of the term. That is what you need to understand here. How this is happening? You are investing this amount, you are expecting 12% return. And then, so when you add the 12% return at the end of first year, this much is the amount due. This much is the amount that you should get if you are getting 12% return. Out of that, 8 rupees coupon is paid to you every year. And when you reduce that, the total amount due is 87.85. And in that amount, you again want 12% return next year. From that, again you will get the coupon. Again you will get the price of the share, that will be in the form of market price of the share. That will be still unrealized. Same like that, again you will get 12%, you want 12% return on that amount due, coupon you are getting, then again you are getting the amount due. Same like that, you want this much return from the value which you are having at the beginning of the year, and then at the end of the year you are getting the coupon. After that, you have to reduce the coupon and bring it to the next year value. If you do this every year, at the end of the term, it will reach the maturity proceeds. Whether if it is redeemed at premium, it will reach the premium. If it is redeemed at a discount, it will be reaching the discount. Like that, whatever the current market price, it will reach the maturity proceeds over the term of the bond. That is what you need to understand. Now, this bond is a bond with annual interest. The interest coupon you are getting, right, that you are getting every year, at the end of every year. But we also have another bond in which you will be getting the interest every 6 months. The face value is 100 we can take. Interest rate 8% per annum, but the interest will be paid every 6 months. Redeemable at par on maturity. Term 5 years, same we can take. YTM 12% required rate. In bond, we will call the required rate as YTM. That is one more thing which you need to remember. Every 6 months, how much interest you will receive? 100 into 8%, this is for 1 year. When you do 6 by 12, you will get 4 rupees. Or else you can change the interest rate from yearly to 6 months. 8% interest rate for 12 months. When you want the interest rate for 6 months period, you can do into 1 by 2 and you will get 4% as the interest rate. This you can directly apply in the face value and get 4 rupees interest every 6 months. Here, since the interest you are getting every 6 months, 0.5 year, 1 year, 1.5 year, like that, every 6 months you are getting the interest. So here the time period which you have to use for discounting and all, it will be 6 months. One time period will be equal to 6 months. Now here you have to calculate the present value. This you have to bring it back by 6 months. This you have to bring it back by 2 6 months. This you have to bring it back by 3 6 months time period. Like that you have to bring. So we have to use the same equation only, but instead of future cash flow, we are taking the amount which you are receiving for every 6 months. For every 6 months you are getting 4 rupees that you are taking, divided by 1 plus, for R we are taking the interest rate per time period. Here one time period equal to 6 months. For 6 months what is the interest rate? 6%. 12% into 6 by 12. 12% required rate of return for 1 year. When you divide it by 12 and multiply by 6, you will get the required rate of return for 6 months. That you have to take 0.06. And then when you want to bring it back by one time period, when you want to bring it back by 6 months, so you have to put 1 in the power because 1 is the time period. When you want to bring it by 12 months, you have to put 2 in the power because you are bringing it back by 2 6 months. So number of years, how much you are having? For example, if you want to bring the cash flow, that is at the end of 5th year, you are having this cash flow. You want to bring it to present value. In this, 5 into 12, you are having 60 months. In that, when you divide by 6, you are having 10 time periods. So, the cash flow at the end of 5th year, you have to bring it back by 10 time periods. So, the 100 maturity proceeds, you have to bring it at a discount rate of 6%. 10 time periods, you have to bring it back. So like that you have to adjust the formula for that. This equation you have to change the rate and then the time period, and then you can bring it to the present value. When you do that, you will get the present value, that will be 85.28. You can either do this like this, or the same interest factor you can use it, 6% for 10 time periods, 6% for the 10th time period. Then this is at the end of 10th year factor. This is the factor for year 1 to 10 fully. Every 6 months the factor will be there. So it will be calculated like this, and then you will get the same price. This 0.04 difference you are getting, right, 0.28 and 0.24, that is due to rounding off difference. So this is the bond valuation when you are getting the interest every 6 months. Just this equation which you need to modify. Time period will be how many 6 months you are having. 6 months will be equal to one time period. If you want to bring the cash flow from 2 years to present value, you have to see how many 6 months are there. 2 years will be having a total of 2 into 12, 24 months. Divided by 6, you will get 4 time periods. So like that, you have to see the time periods as 6 months. And then R should be the rate of return, the required rate of return for every 6 months. That also you should calculate proportionately and use that for bringing it to present value. That's all about the points which you need to note in bonds with semi-annual interest.